A man spends 10 years in prison and works out like crazy. 5 days after he gets out of prison, he kills all his enemies, including the police.
Ryan Little.
Hi everyone, this is Ethan, talking about the movie. Johnson is a strong prisoner who has tattoos on his arms. Today is the day he is released after 10 years in prison. He's never been in trouble, but he's never been afraid either. Prisoners who messed with him had a hard time. So Johnson made a lot of enemies. But he didn't care. He just wanted to get out of prison and get revenge on himself and his brother. Instead of breaking him, the time he spent in prison made him stronger. Someone on the outside had already prepared an old sports car for him. It came with a list of addresses for revenge and a revolver. Johnson didn't go anywhere. He drove straight to an office building. Upstairs, a salesman on the phone saw him. His face froze. Johnson pulled out a gun and shot and killed the salesman. A security camera recorded the whole thing, but he didn't care. Because revenge was the only thing keeping him alive, the police quickly cordoned off the crime scene. The woman in charge of the case was the short-haired girl. But out of nowhere Billy appears, a skinny, cigarette-smoking cop in a flowered shirt. He was a few weeks away from retirement. Her superiors have asked him to help her solve the case. She hates this unruly, scruffy guy, turning around and leaving him out in the open. In the evening, Johnson went to a detective agency. The news that he had shot an employee appeared on television. But the detective was not surprised to see Johnson. Because he had provided him with the car and the list. Johnson had come to buy the rest of the list from him. But the detective asked him for more money. He even called the big bouncer from the store to intimidate Johnson. But when the big, greasy man saw Johnson's tattoos, he knew who he was. He knows who he is. He said he couldn't afford to mess with this guy, so he stormed off in a huff. The detective looked around and handed the rest of the list to Johnson. He didn't dare take the money either. On the other hand, we met Corey, a ruthless killer. Growing up with a defective left leg, he did not bow to fate. Growing up, he won several medals in extreme sports. As a rich kid, he has no shortage of money. He only charges $1 to murder someone. Corey has a beautiful and sexy girlfriend, Lily. Lily has a kind heart and is always trying to convince Corey to quit his job as an assassin. Have children with her and live as husband and wife. But it wasn't meant to be, and soon a mysterious man calls. He asks Corey to kill Johnson. Corey goes down to the garage where he keeps his cars. He gives himself and his car a new identity. Lily goes to the gun shop and offers to help him pick out a gun. She wants to be good, but it also hurts. The girl with the short hair also found out who Johnson was. He made a lot of money selling contraband in prison. During that time, people kept trying to kill him. In the end, they were all killed by Johnson. The tattoo on his arm is made so that no one messes with him. 10 years ago, Johnson's brother and his gang robbed a bank. They robbed a bank because they were in debt. The driver retired and Johnson was brought in to take his place. And through his skillful driving and cool head, he manages to escape from the police. But no sooner does he finish the dirty work than someone turns on Johnson's brother. Suddenly, a group of men burst into the house, threatening to kill his brother if he doesn't tell them where the money is. Johnson reveals the whereabouts of the money. But the thief, when he got the money, turned around to kill his brother. An elderly man recorded the whole thing and enjoyed filming the murder. After the other man took the money, Johnson was also shot in the head with a gun. But a miracle happened. After the doctor pronounced Johnson dead, Johnson sat back down. The doctor explained that Johnson had a metal plate in his skull, which caused the bullet to ricochet and exit through his cheek. I don't know if his head was too thick or if his face wasn't thick enough, the short-haired girl exclaimed. In any case, she's lucky to have survived. Johnson's skull is still held in place by metal. Johnson's next target was the elderly man in the video. The old man is still a sick old man. He had been luring nice girls to come clean his house. The victim was then violently attacked and videotaped. Johnson bursts in the door. This so frightened the old man that he threw his camera away. Terrified, he looked at Johnson in disbelief that he was still alive. Your life is over, old man, and he was shot in the head. As Johnson left the scene, he was watched by Corey. Fortunately, a little girl was in Johnson's path. The little girl screamed and Johnson saw the killer, pushing the girl hard in a wild shootout with Corey. But no one was hurt. Johnson didn't want to fight and quickly walked away. There was another woman on the list. But Johnson doesn't want to kill her, because she's his wife. After 10 years in prison, his wife had remarried and had a child with someone else. This added to Johnson's grief and he hugged his ex-wife before leaving. On the other hand, Corey and Lily got married. It was a wedding just for the two of them. The party was replaced by a gun show. Corey plans to take down Johnson so he can retire, sell the lake house, and go live a normal life in Pasadena. Johnson's next target is Roy Groen. Roy Groen is now a security guard at a bar. The moment he saw Johnson in the bathroom, he knew only one of them was going to make it out alive. He pulls out a knife and starts fighting Johnson in the melee. But he was no match for Johnson. He stabbed him in the heart with a sharp instrument in just a few moves. Before he died, Roy Groen demanded Johnson apologize to his son. In the car, Johnson called Roy's son. He helped fulfill his last wish. An investigation of the short-haired girl revealed that Johnson's enemies are all police informants. Billy doesn't seem convinced. Johnson, on the other hand, he heard on the radio. Last night, Roy Groen did not die. He was now in the hospital. He turned the car around and headed for the hospital. And Billy had arrived early at the scene to set up an ambush. He knew Johnson would be there. Meanwhile, Corey had been called to the hospital by the mystery man. Johnson saw Roy Groen in the operating room, pleading for his life. He pulled out his small revolver and shot him several times. And this time, he killed him for good. Billy heard the shots and ran over. He chased Johnson into the basement and engaged him in a gunfight. As the lights flickered, Johnson rounded the corner. Billy's hands were shaking with tension. He had no confidence in himself. Sure enough, around the corner was the barrel of Johnson's gun. Billy jumped in fright and fell to his knees. Johnson looked at his badge and opted to let him go. As they left the hospital, Johnson was once again Corey's target. The two men raced down the road in pursuit. Then Johnson found an opportunity to skid. He stopped Corey's car with his own and was the first to draw his gun. But seeing that the other man was not his enemy, Johnson didn't want to cause any more trouble. He simply shot out Corey's tires. This humiliated Corey, who quickly drew his gun and shot Johnson in the neck. Johnson fled. He went to his mother's house and had his wounds stitched. His father was dead, but Johnson was not sad, because his father loved his brother more since he was a child. Johnson made things difficult for him and even denied that he was his son. Because of this, his brother took care of him at all times, which is why Johnson loved him so much in his own heart. After sunrise, Johnson set out again. The list was whittled down to the last man. Meanwhile, at the police station, Billy had at last won the respect of the police by coming face to face with Johnson. The short-haired lady told him that all the dead men were police informants. The chances of such a coincidence are almost nil, so there must be something to that 10-year-old money blackmail case. Billy can't sit still and drives alone. Johnson's last target was a pastor. He's preaching the spirit of Jesus in a simple lakeside church. But the pastor, who had been talking passionately 1 minute, when he saw Johnson walk through the door, she was startled and speechless, and then fought the urge not to cry and continue with the prayer. The pastor had seen the news of Johnson's revenge on television the other day. He knew he was going to go after him. So he dedicated a prayer to him on the radio. The pastor is now a reformed man. He and his wife have a son. He doesn't ask Johnson to spare his life. He just asked him to take a walk by the lake to say his last words. Once upon a time, back then he was just a janitor. He was the only one who tried to stop the killer from killing Johnson's brother. He was finally released after confessing in prison. Johnson looked at the pastor who prayed before he died. "I accidentally shoot the bullets in the air. I'm getting older and my hands are a little restless," said Johnson. From a distance, Corey the assassin watched this. He seems to have found his target again. In the church, Johnson looks at his brother's picture. He remembered a few phrases from the Bible. In this moment of revenge, he has done his duty. That's when Corey's gun was pointed at Johnson's head. But Johnson had nothing left to do but die. Corey, as a murderer, was again offended. "You and I are in the same business, so show some respect." "That's a little disrespectful, isn't it?" exclaimed Corey. He looked at Johnson's revenge list. It reminds him that the job isn't done, because the one who hired him to kill him is missing. At that moment, Billy walked in with his gun. Corey had no choice but to drop the gun. But Billy shot Johnson in the head. Turns out it's the same guy who shot Johnson in the head in that house. Is the mystery man who hired Corey. Billy, he was a good cop but accidentally got addicted to drugs. Then they became too expensive, so he hired all of his informants to double-cross Johnson's brother and steal the money. And he confirms it himself with Corey. He found out about the money from Johnson's brother's girlfriend, as she was one of his informants. The dust settles. Billy planned to retire on his full pension. Corey refused to accept the $1 payment because he hadn't earned it. And he quit. But just as Billy's plan was working, a crisp shot rang out and Billy went down. That's right, the man who shot him was the immortal Johnson. The bullet hit the steel plate in his head. "Hey, I can't die." And retaliated by shooting Billy in the head. The short-haired girl also discovered that Billy was the traitor. But when she arrived, Billy's body was lifeless. She quietly put away the list of the dead. After all, they were all dead. Johnson scattered her brother's ashes in the lake. And the movie ends here.